Hello and welcome to Prime Ventures podcast. I'm absolutely delighted today to have with me co-founder and CEO of Whatfix, Khadim Batti. Khadim, welcome to the podcast.
My pleasure, Shripati. Very glad to be back talking to you after several years. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And today we are going to go into all things SaaS. And as Whatfix has scaled from zero to tens of millions of dollars of revenue, I think it is a terrific journey wherein we can go into a lot of detail about what it takes to build a really global and successful SaaS business. So we'll get to that, Khadim. Could you just give a quick overview on what is Whatfix? What is the product and what problem is it solving?
Yeah. So at the macro, Shripati, there are more than 750, 800 billion worth of enterprise software sold every year. And if you translate back to enterprises, they're spending several hundreds of millions or at least a billion or two every year on buying these softwares. On an average, enterprises have more than 900 softwares today. 30% being SaaS. SaaS is going fast anyway. Now they would not realize ROI on this hundreds of millions of dollars they're spending until and unless employees use the software efficiently and effectively. That's the problem we are trying to solve. We are trying to create a layer of experience, a layer of guidance on top of underlying software stack, be it CRM, ERP, custom software, whatever employees are using in terms of the organization. Ensure they get the right nudges, the right guidance at the moment of need, on demand, in application, which makes them more productive, ensures the ROI is realized by the organization. It's a new category, which is called digital adoption solutions. And we are one of the forefront players in this category.
Got it. So essentially, instead of asking the employee to go ahead and read the manual or go look up help and all that kind of stuff, this is in context help, which is right then and there, so that you can start using the software much more effectively, much more quickly. Am I putting it the right way?
Yeah, another simple way to put it, we are a GPS for software.
Perfect. All right. So let's rewind back to 2014, I guess, when we were, very early in the days of Whatfix, and looking at the journey from 0 to 1. So the first $1 million, which by many measures for a SaaS company is the most difficult period. And so if I could rewind the clock back to then, Khadim, so what was the product then? Let me just ask that. What problem you're trying to solve then? Was it the same or was it different?
So let me tell you a real story, actually, how this problem itself came up for us, actually. So me and my co-founder, colleague, Kumar, he's based in Valley now. So we both were in Bangalore. We were trying to build a software to help small businesses to improve their social media and search visibility. So in 2011, 12, 13 timeframe, every businesses wanted to come online and take leverage of their online presence. So we wanted to help them out. Our hypothesis was, since small businesses can pay only $20, $30, we need to give them a solution which is more self-serve. And that's where somewhere we got started. People were subscribing to it. They were churning in few months because they were not realizing the ROI out of that. They were not implementing the bunch of recommendations what we were giving them. So either we had to wrap up with the services around that particular solution, or we had to make our solution, which was called Search Enable at that point, as a fully self-serve. While trying to make it self-serve, Whatfix came out as a byproduct. So we used to have a button called Fix It. When you click on a Fix It button, it will show the business owners what are the parameters they need to fix in their websites or their social media handles and so on. Many of them came back to us saying, can I use this for my customers? And that made us start thinking like, okay, this is something else as a byproduct or as a feature came out, which actually is solving a different problem where many people wanted to handhold their customers so that their support, their training needs come down and their product engagement goes up. So we debated a bit and then we pivoted, and that's how the name also derives from Fix It button to Whatfix. And so to cut short your answer to you, we wanted to actually help small businesses at that point to use Whatfix to reduce the support queries by ensuring that a support article, support FAQs can be converted into interactive guidance, which we had built.
Okay. So the product comes out and you're initially getting some traction. Did you immediately start focusing on clients outside India, or where did you start?
So it was very clear somehow because our prior experience of search enabler for a couple of years, what we tried, we somehow started believing that the majority of the market is in US and outside India, and sooner or later we'll have to focus. But it was easier actually to get inputs and the validation of the product with the local people, local customers around Bangalore. So what we did is initially, we were only two people startup. So my co-founder used to give me 20-25 email IDs every day, primarily SaaS companies or small businesses, startups in Bangalore. I used to write them custom emails, send them across, had a one or two landing pages. And as soon as we get some response, we used to actually go and meet them and launch the product very quickly. That's how we got, in 3 months, we got some 30-35 demos, we got 4-5 customers, and we got somewhere close to product market fit. Now, we didn't want to spend too much time in India. It was just to validate our product, validate some amount of features and expectations, what would we have. Immediately, we started focusing on US. So we again started a similar model, start going outbound to US, again getting that first 3 customers. So in first 10 customers, we had 6 to 7 from India, 2 from US, and 1 from France. So right from very early days, in the first 6 months itself, we started focusing internationally.
Okay. And I presume the outreach was the same. You sent emails and then probably followed up with phone calls. There was no Zoom then.
Yes, we used outbound. We didn't know the methods much at that point, so it was more online calls and get those customers, potential customers on call, production customers on discussion, so that we can see the reaction pretty quickly before we build any hypothesis. So we at the point when we sold 89 customers our product, we started realizing that some repeatability in the pitch, some of the wow factors in the pitch, which was resonating with them. What problem statements were getting repeated again and again. So somewhere when we got the repetition of the pitch, I think that's where we realized that, okay, now we're going to start scaling and reaching out to more customers, and we hired our first sales guy.
Understood. So what was the size of these customers? Which kind of customers were you targeting in this phase?
So we typically, when we hire customers which have like $5-10 million kind of a fundraise, they would have done, they would have 100 employees, because we wanted to target price of a product at that point to $2,000-$3,000 a year. So that's how we started. Of course, it changed around.
Sorry, how much was it?
$2,000-$3,000 a year.
Okay.
So a couple of hundred MRR. So initially we thought our product would be more relevant we'll start with SMB globally, but then gradually we realized that it's nice to have, and then we have to move up the segment. And today we have a product market fit, or our sweet spot is enterprises.
Okay. But we'll get to that in a second, Khadim, when and how you transition to enterprises. So the first million, so how long did it take to get to the first million ARR after you had actually started this, after you got the first customers in India or US?
We might not be a very good example for that. We took around almost 3 years, right? Because we started with, as I was mentioning, with small businesses. So first year, even though we started getting customers, we couldn't reach, because we were charging only a couple of $1,000s. We could reach only 120K first year, and then 300K on the second year. And then we started realizing our product market fit into larger segment, in the enterprise segment. And then the third year, we actually got to over $1 million.
Okay. So let's talk about the product market fit. I mean, there's something which you just mentioned there. And that is like realizing when you have a product market fit, right? How do when did you get that we actually have PMF?
Yeah. So I would say reaching PMF is a multiple stages actually, right? So first stage was actually when we got a problem statement very clear, the solution what we were proposing, that whole pitch we were giving them, the sales process. I think that repeatability was a stage 1, I would say, where we thought, okay, we are actually getting customers regularly, and they're resonating with the pitch. Now it's time to get a couple of sales guys. So that was a stage 1. You can say kind of a pitch being more clear. The stage 2 was actually when they bought the product and they started deploying and utilizing it. So when they started deploying and they started seeing some ROI, and they were renewing it, and they were not churning, or they were actually seeing the value out of it, I think that was a stage 2. I think the combination of the stage 1 and stage 2, I think I would say a PMF. Since our product actually initially were, as I was mentioning, was targeting small businesses, we used to see a lot of churn there. So we were able to repeatedly sell, but we were not able to retain because it was kind of a nice to have. It was not a burning problem for them. They didn't want to put enough effort, and when they didn't put enough effort, they would not see ROI, and we would see a churn. That's why we went to a segment which was a little larger, let's say 500 to 1,000 people company. And they started seeing benefit out of it because they could put the effort and they can see an ROI. So that's the reason I would say the product market fit was when we changed the segment.
So you did that maybe a couple of years into the product when you moved from SMB to enterprise?
Yes, couple of years into the product and around $500,000 AR.
Okay, understood. I think that's a very common theme in the sense that getting SEs to retain is just a much bigger challenge. However, selling to enterprise is a very different motion. So how much of a product change did you have to make to now start addressing the enterprise? Now you said that, hey, look, you had a problem with SMBs. So what was the thinking process in terms of both the product and then the pricing when you started thinking enterprise?
Yeah. So let me come back to the pricing actually. So there were 3 or 4 different use cases we had identified. So when we were going for a small businesses, the primary use case, as I was describing earlier, was to help the small businesses to ensure a better support or self-based support to their customers. Now here the target persona was product manager or a founder or a CEO, CTO of the company. Now, since these were small businesses, the problem statement they were trying to currently solve with the knowledge base of wikis or support desk and all, the paying capacity was $2,000-$3,000 in itself. Maybe I would have got more if I would have got into enterprise segment for that particular use case. The second use case, which actually we started moving towards, was going behind to a company, enterprise, which has, let's say, few hundred sales guys, and they are using a CRM like Salesforce or Dynamics. Now they are not getting an adoption on top of CRM, which they have already spent a couple of $1 million, and they want to ensure the buck out of it. Now, when they're spending a couple of $1 million for 400, 500 license of a Salesforce or something, I think for them to see an ROI, it won't be a problem to write $50,000 to $100,000 checks. So the price point started evolving based on this particular use case because the value what we were giving them was much higher. So that's.
And did you discover this use case, when your customers themselves started asking you for it, or they were already using it that way? Or how did that come about?
Yeah, so we discovered actually when we were attending one of the events, Dreamforce in US. So before that, we started getting some signals about these use cases. So we said, okay, this would take a while for us to get the validation. So why not attend an event where we can actually, in 2 to 3 days, we can talk to a couple of hundred people and actually decide, okay, this is where the sweet spot is. So we took a chance. Actually, we went to Dreamforce. We had a booth there, and the 3 days we spoke to almost 300 people. In 3 days, 300 people from day 1, first pitch to the last pitch. I think it changed dramatically. A lot of things changed, and we iterated while speaking. We iterated the price point. I remember one story, like when we told one of the person, they had 1,000 sales people in their organization, and they asked for the price. So we were selling for $2,000-$3,000 as I mentioned earlier. And when we went there, we said, okay, we'll tell higher price. $8,000 was we decided. At the time, we didn't know about the 50K and all. We told the person, okay, it's going to be $8,000 as a price point. He said, okay, 8 into 12, $96,000 looks fine. So for us, it was $8,000 a year. He thought it was a month because he was spending $5-6 million on CRM. He could never imagine somebody's going to pay me, give me this kind of a solution for 8K. It doesn't make sense, right? So along with the pitch, along with that use case, we started realizing, identifying the price point as well. apart from that, people started saying, okay, not only Salesforce, I have my CPQ, I have my CLM. I also want my people to actually get engaged on those type of software. And suddenly we started realizing the TAM, which we were seeing maybe $500 million or $1 billion on that particular use case one. Now here the TAM seems to be pretty huge now. So the TAM, the fitment, the pricing point, everything actually started resonating very well.
That definitely a very pivotal moment, right? I think that I would say there are several founding moments in a company's history, right? It's not just one moment when it gets founded, and it seems like the second founding moment for Whatfix.
For sure, actually, like it was so exciting, very tiring. Like every day we were only 3-4 people company at that point, and going into the booth and meeting so many people, it was very exciting moment for us.
So then you decide to go into, start focusing on enterprise, and I guess completely rethinking your pricing. So what about the sales motion now? Because now this is not DIY, or at least I don't know whether you can do $100,000 sale remotely. So how are you thinking?
Yeah, so since initially also even for small businesses, we went outbound, we were giving demo, we were getting demo because we wanted to learn. That was not the motion we wanted to build, but we wanted to learn. And we had some experience of that particular motion. So we started scaling that particular motion. So for driving the demand generation, since event worked for us, at least to get the validation, so we started doing more events across the year, at least 5-6 events every, like 1 or 2 events every quarter. Get those demand. We started doing Google advertisements to drive some traffic. That was number 2. Then we used to qualify those opportunities and then give it to sales guys for the process what we had built. By the time I think, as I was mentioning, we were getting close to $1 million. So we had built a process where we would give a demo. And also, being a new category, a lot of people didn't know what exactly this product contains. Like, how do I use them? How do I realize it? It's more seen than described, right? So we used to, after the initial discussion and some brief demo, we used to encourage customers a lot to do a POC with us. And we used to say that, okay, within 15 days, we'll show you how quickly it can be integrated, deployed, and some ROI can be generated out of it. So we used to encourage them for 15 days, 30 days demo. And once they see the demo, we were actually enabling the champion to go and actually show the same thing to their other colleagues in the company and get the budget. Because even this is a new category, there's no budget as well. So somebody had to evangelize internally as well. So we had to enable the champion as well. And they used to get the budget, and then we used to go for the security evaluation, IT evaluation, and then close. Right? So again, getting into enterprise, those are the categories like security. So you had asked earlier one question which I didn't answer, I didn't get a chance to answer about the product, right? Changing the product from small businesses to enterprise, right? So one of the first friction point what we see was the security. Now, many of these large enterprises wanted you to be ISO compliant, SOC compliant. There's like a lot of certifications they needed. Initially, many of the companies don't have that, right? Or it takes a while, 6 months, 12 months cycle to get those. So and even if the company has the certification, sometimes the trust is not established because maybe we are trying to get the first Fortune customer or the first large enterprise. So what we did a quick hack on our product. End of the day, it's a guidance platform. So somebody has to create the guides and then it has to be deployed. So what we started doing is we used to start creating, like, you create the guides using Whatfix on the cloud on your test environment, which doesn't have any issues with security or compliance need and all. Once you do this, I would give you a module where you can actually download everything, whatever you created, like a package, and deploy it on your server or in your device, which can be used by your employees, and no calls would go to Whatfix Cloud or anywhere outside. So it's completely safe. And since it is deployed on premise, you don't need any certifications or anything. That's how I got my first 3-4 enterprise customers. We called it export mechanism. So that was the one hack we did for our software. Second, since we were getting deployed in enterprise environment, on the use case like CRM, let's say Salesforce or a success factors in HR, we don't have access to the source code of Salesforce or anyone. So we can't inject anything via script, which we typically would do for a company which is owning a product, right? So now we need to have a different mechanism to inject Whatfix. So what we did was we used to identify like, okay, what is the standard browser mechanism which companies are using? And typically it's a 2 or 3, right? Most of them is Chrome or some version of IE now Edge and Firefox. So mostly IE and Chrome we used to figure out. So what we did was we created a browser extension. And we say, okay, we will work with your IT department, create an IT policy where the browser extension will be deployed across all the employees of the department. And that would inject on top of Salesforce or SuccessFactors. You won't need to integrate any source code. So that was the second change we did on a product to work with this enterprise internal use case actually. So some modifications for the product, definitely some modification for also to ensure that we can work around the security. But as we got more companies on board, we got definitely all the security compliances. So today when we show anybody that okay, we have 70 or 80, 14 companies on board, nobody asks for most of the issues, and they say, okay, fine. So gradually we reverted back, like we canceled those export mechanism, which was a workaround, because now we wanted a single mechanism for everyone. So that we got rid of. In between, actually, when we got first Fortune 10 customer, they were so fixated on, okay, I want everything on-prem. So we even gave to on-prems also, but gradually we convinced them and we also moved them to cloud. So now every customer is on the cloud with a single model, everyone.
And that's a really fascinating story about the on-prem export module, because basically it's sort of like a trial software there, right? Which is completely different code base probably, and customer getting used to it. A terrific hack. So what about the, let's go to the sales motion now, right? Like what were the sales cycles like? Because going from an SMB where the sales cycles might be a few weeks, I'm thinking, for them to agree. What were you think? What were you seeing as the sales cycles in enterprise?
Yeah, so as soon as 2 things changed actually, Shripati. One, sales cycle definitely. Sales cycle started being somewhere around 4 to 6 months, from 4 to 6 weeks, which was initially, right? But of course, it compensated with a good amount of price point. And the second is even post sales, the go live period. Because a small company, when you work with the product manager, somebody then go to a week or 3 weeks. You know, even the go live, you need too much of internal bureaucracy, effort allocations, and other stuff. So the go live period also started going to 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. So 2 things we saw dramatic change. Again, the work for us was actually create more demand, create more pipes. So if you have a salesperson working with 8 to 10 opportunities in any given quarter, subsequently at least 2 of them will start closing. So the predictability started baking in. The transition initially took a while. In fact, Alok, who is on our board, used to give us a lot of heads up, saying that Khadim, if you want to get X number in 3 quarters down the line, you have to encounter the 6-month sales cycle, 3 months of sales ramp up, and 3 months of hiring a person, right? So quota capacity planning and all, which didn't come naturally to us because we were graduating from SMB to enterprise. So having someone experienced on board helped, and that took a while. I think first 6 to 8 months, I think it took a while for us to realize, but then it got baked into the plan later.
Wonderful. So have the sales cycle kind of reduced over time? I mean, I'm just trying to see what the enterprise when a mature product looks like, and if so, how much does it reduce by?
No, so actually, I think our sales cycles are still around average 4.5 months, 5 months. And some of the deals even takes 8 months, 10 months, and 12 months as well. If the deal size is even further gone up, 50K, 80K, which I was saying, now we started closing $500,000 deals, sometimes 800K deals, 600K deals, because now customers also actually getting so much aware of our category. They're coming to us and saying, okay, this was fine. I bought you on CRM. Now, actually, this is lovely. I'm getting very good ROI of this. I want to use this on 20 other applications. Now, this 20 other applications span across 3-4 departments. There are 5 different stakeholders, buyers, 4 VPs involved, CIO involved, someone involved. So the cycles are even longer, right? But of course, the deal size are 500, 700, 800K, and it starts going up. So it compensates there. Many new customers which are trying our category for the first time also started saying, okay, I want to start with 4 applications. I'm doing a digital transformation of complete ERP stack or CRM stack. And in partners, SIs have recommended that I should use adoption solution, otherwise it will take a while. So a lot of awareness is actually helping us to get larger deals now, But sales cycles are kind of constant because security validation, IT validation, vendor registration, those things are anyway would take a couple of months.
Got it. So talk about the sales force then, like the kind of people, because now I would think you would require an on-the-ground sales force in the geography where your customers are, and your geographies being, as you mentioned, US and perhaps Europe. So how was it like go through the process of building a sales force in the US? Because that's not an easy exercise.
Yeah, so it has also evolved. I think our learning is quite different than many of the companies here, because we started selling from India initially. We didn't have enough money to hire at that point in US, so we didn't have a choice, right? And it worked because new category, hardly any competition. People wanted to start small. There was a kind of a blessing in disguise in a way, because everybody wanted to experiment and try it out. So most of the companies started with single application license, and single application license used to be anywhere between 50, 80K kind of a price point for us. And once they see ROI on a single application, they used to start expanding to multiple applications, right? Now, multiple applications will be across different departments, across different projects and all. Now, for getting into multiple applications, you need to have a lot of relationship building, create a champions, use champions to navigate, do internal kiosks, workshops, do some internal marketing within a large enterprise. For example, if you take any large company, right, whether it's a J&J or MetLife or anyone, right, Cisco or anyone, they have thousands of software where Whatfix can be deployed. So we need to do a lot of marketing within that company itself. So a lot of on-the-ground work is required. Whereas when you land into those companies, if they're writing you 50, 80K check, they have figured out some kind of a use case. So it's like there is an already an intent. It can work even remotely. So over a period of time, what has happened for a company like us, the model for sales has evolved is land from India and expand in the region. So I have 30, 40 territory sales folks sitting out of India, selling in Europe and US. They are primarily landing and acquiring in Europe at a 50, 80, 100K kind of a price point. Occasionally, they also get $200,000, $300,000 or $500,000 deal even to start with. But once we land, we have account directors or account managers in different parts of the world who owns 6 to 8 logos, and their job is only to build relationship with these logos, identify the new projects and new budgets, and keep expanding. So that's the model which has beautifully evolved for us, and it's paying us very good dividends.
So that's really a very interesting. I have not heard of that kind of model, often when talking to SaaS companies. So do you think that in what kind of situations or what kind of products do you think that model can work? And where do you think you probably need to actually have even the land piece done with a field sales force?
Yeah, so specifically because it was of a new category, so I'm repeating that. So new category, majority of the enterprise, whether it's a Fortune or a large enterprise, they want to start small. They want to experiment it first. So the experiment budget is still $50,000, $100,000. So your remote land would work, right? But once you want to expand and get enterprise-wide or department-wide across 30 applications, 50 applications, those kind of a multi-million-dollar deals, I think we need to have a lot more touch points on the ground. That's number one. That should work for a similar model where we land small and expand big. That kind of model doesn't matter. It should work this kind of thing. The second one, now where we need to actually, even for land, now as we are getting in, more bigger lands also have started because the category awareness has increased. So if you are getting a Fortune 500 or Global 1000 a strategic account where they want to actually start even at $250,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, some kind of more touch would be required. So what we have tried is, in this case also, some strategic AEs for land we are positioning in the region, but many of them are still able to do it from India with the cover fire from a sales engineer who is sitting in the region.
Understood.
So again, it's an experiment. You have to keep thinking and what's the best way to balance out and make things work in a more efficient way.
Yes, absolutely. Let me ask you one more question around that, which is, I've seen a lot of startups when they are doing overseas sales force have a lot of fit and starts with respect to hiring, in the sense that assembling the right team Right. It is. It takes a while, and there can be a lot of mistakes with people, churning and everything else. How was it for you? I mean, did you were you able to do that fairly well the first go around, or what was the experience like?
Also, I think everybody has their fair share of mistakes. Even we did actually, specifically the expansion part. If I have to explain, right? So we thought expansions will come naturally. It didn't come so naturally for us. Then we thought, okay, a sales guy who have done the deal would do the expansion as well. Now expansion
Hmm.
came out to be a lot more outbound, but the sales guys are getting inbound and some other event leads, and also they became very transactional. So they were not focusing on expansion. If it comes naturally, it is a bonus for them. So that science was not getting established there. The process was not getting built. So we thought, okay, now after sales is done, the relationship has been built by customer success department. So customer success department has to do expansions. So we moved that responsibility. That also didn't work because, of course, new dollars, everybody gets carried. The focus on the ROI and value delivery started reducing. And being a new category was very important for us. We didn't want to compromise that because onus is on vendor on us to show the ROI and make everybody learn from the enterprise like how this has to be built, how to build COEs and how to. So again, we thought, okay, this is not the right place. And the third iteration we did was, okay, have a dedicated sales guys for expansion, which we call account managers now. Now, within those account managers also, we had some iterations, right? They were hit and miss. Now, we realized many of the account managers in the market are truly relationship builders. Like, okay, I have a relationship established with you. I have sold you ERP and sell you 3 more products. But in our case, it was not that, right? I will sell you something, then I have to go to other department. I will sell on CRM, then I will sell on ERP, which is part of maybe finance, then I will sell into procurement, then I will sell into HR. There are hundreds of application, different departments. So it's not only relation, along with relation, some amount of handling capability is also required. Right? So that iteration also was required when we got deeper and we realized, okay, this is exactly anything. So once you figure out exactly the motion of the type of sales DNA motion is required, accordingly the JD would change and then you would figure it out.
That is fascinating. I think I really like the way you described that, which is the person who is actually doing the expansion is also actually doing some hunting. And it boils down to being really close to understanding the decision-making process of the buyer, of the enterprise buyer, having a really deep understanding of that. So how often do you talk to customers, Khadim?
So every trip when I go, I definitely meet at least 4 to 5 customers. Try to talk and figure it out, like how they are using Whatfix, what are the ROI parameters they are looking, what are the different use cases. Or like apart from that, actually, I think another interesting thing which might be useful for many of your audiences, because we didn't want it to go too far away from from the customers, including many of our leadership. And being a new category, again, we feel the solution has to keep evolving because no true solution has been built. It's a journey, right? So what we did is we came up with we call it executive sponsor program. So every VP and above at Whatfix, from product, from engineering, from all the departments except sales, would be executive sponsor for 3 logos. Like I'm personally executive sponsor for 3 logos. I would be directly connected with those guys. They can reach out to me for any bottlenecks or anything. I'll be talking to them every quarter, at least once. And whenever I travel, I have to meet. In that way, we were covering 25, 30 different logos. Right? I would go to the depth of even implementation, what's happening, what's not working, what are the tickets. At least for that 3 logos, if not for everything. Similarly, we at some point, like 24 months back, we also created a couple of advisory boards of customers, customer advisory board. So for 2 or 3 different use cases, we identified for CRM and for complete employee experience use case. Identified 6 or 7 different customers and their decision makers or stakeholders, similar profile. And we get them every quarter. We present them 3 problems, what we are working on, what direction we want to get their inputs, make them. So basically, the advisory board we brainstorm for like 90 minutes or 20 minutes. So that's a second way where we participate in a collaborative group. The executive sponsor is another program. Apart from that, there's always firefighting. Somebody wants me to make some customers, some say they want me to track. So that keeps happening. But this is more structured way. We are trying to involve as many senior folks from Whatfix as possible.
Makes sense. I guess these advisory boards are now virtual. I mean, in the world of Zoom.
Yes, as of now it's virtual. We want to now take them to in person.
Wonderful. So you mentioned like, new category several times in our conversation. So what all did you do for awareness building of that for this category?
Very, I think we've been doing too many different experiments. So one is thought leadership. A lot of content we've been writing. It's getting hits of around 250,000 a month now, actually. And it's not like writing about Whatfix and all. Writing about the broader problem statements, like writing about digital transformation, how this fits in the whole digital transformation piece, how this fits into the change management piece, right? So writing those articles so that I don't want to convert them, but I want people to start understanding that this is a crucial piece of digital transformation. And gradually, it took a while for us to get those traffic kicking in, but now it's like pretty huge. It's just exploding. The second one was actually most of the CXOs or large enterprises make decisions after talking to the analyst. So there are analysts like Gartners, Forresters, IDCs, and there are Everest, and there are several specific to industry verticals and all. So pretty early compared to many other startups I've seen, we created an analyst relationship program. So we hired a dedicated person for that as part of our product marketing group. And today, actually, we are doing almost like 40, 45 briefings every quarter. Wow. Right. So if you just look at Gartner World, for example, or a Forrester or IDC World, there is an analyst identified for our category now. But that is specific to us. But there are so many other analysts which can influence. So there is an analyst who is specific to CRM. Now they should also know, okay, when they recommend CRM to someone, they should also recommend that. Okay, analyst referring HR software like SuccessFactors or Workday. Analyst referring ERP. Analyst working for insurance programs. Analyst working with SIs or GSIs like Infosys, Accenture, Wipro. They should also say that in your CRM practice something that's so. We started briefing and going really horizontal, apart from focusing on our DAP analyst as well. So it needed a lot of effort and a lot of focus and going into that. So that worked for us, content I was mentioning. Third, we started doing a lot of events. So going into events of CRM, going into events of HR, ERP, because we want to ride on top of it. So today, virtually and physically combined, I think we might be doing 40 to 50 events a year, which would be generating at least 10 to 15,000 top of the funnel contacts or leads for us. And that's another way of creating that market awareness. In fact, even after getting to the stage where we have 600 plus enterprise customers, when I go to event, I was there a couple of months back. And so like still 60 to 70% people who come to a booth, they said, I've never heard about this company. So we are still so far away, right? And it also shows, okay, there's too much headroom to grow and keep running. So this one and the third, events, content, AR. I think these are the three most important aspects we tried on category awareness, actually. Yeah. And apart from that, we focused because inbound will be limited for us because not many people can search for this. They don't know about this. So fourth one, we started focusing on building a proper outbound engine. So we almost have like 60, 70 team, which does a lot of outbound emails, marketing, all stuff, and also they also start their cadences by not selling directly Whatfix, but actually sending them white papers, sending them case studies and how this category works. What is this category about? Right from the awareness stage.
All right. I think you mentioned four things there. You mentioned content, you mentioned events, you mentioned outbound, and then you mentioned the analyst program. And I feel that, I've seen a lot of companies do the first three, but the depth with which you mentioned you are briefing, you said 40 to 50 briefings a year, if I'm not mistaken.
No, 40 to 50 a quarter.
40 to 50 a quarter, which is like, a couple of hundred a year. Yes. I mean, that level of focus is something which I have not seen too often. And I think that it is very important for our listeners as well who are looking at enterprise software that the analysts play a very key influencer role to the buyers, to the CIOs and the CTOs of the organizations where enterprise sales decisions are being made. So we're running a little bit short on time. Khadim, it's been a terrific conversation. So let me actually just close with a couple of questions for you. So, which is if you had to go back and no pun intended, fix one thing in the Whatfix journey, uh, now that you know so much and been through through this evolution, what would that be?
I would directly start selling to enterprise without worrying too much, because we spend a lot of time graduating from each level, right? So I would directly price really high, start selling to enterprise. That would maybe save 3 years of our journey.
Go direct to enterprise, because the product is so much is different, right? So that basically the SMB step doesn't buy you too much.
Yes.
To paraphrase it differently. And final question here. So, what would your advice be to Indian SaaS founders who are looking for global markets? Because that's a big focus, I think, also by all measures, a very big opportunity. So, what would be your advice to founders who are in the 0 to 1 journey right now and looking to go global? How should they think about it?
So if they have decided that sooner or later they want to go global to build a large company, I would say as soon as you get your basic product market fit, like 8, 10 customers or whatever the initial phase, immediately start going to global, start figuring out the US or whichever territory you want to. Because I've seen many startups saying, okay, things are working out well in India, I get 2 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. The more time you spend, the more that particular geography is getting captured by some of the competitor. So I would say write as early as possible. Don't wait. Don't spend too much time saying I'll go later. And also focus on 1 or 2 geographies. Like if you are going for US, focus on US, because operations are hard. Because if you are selling from India, if you are supporting from India, if you are demand generation from India, people have to work for a US shift, let's say 5 to 3 in the night. So same person also doing for Europe or Southeast Asia and all this become very hard. So if you have a really focused geography, I'm going to do for US, you can align the whole operations and time zones accordingly. People respond on time, things start moving faster rather than being opportunistic 2 year and all. It doesn't.
Very, very good points. Thank you, Khadim, for sharing your insights. A really frank and wide-ranging conversation, and a really good deep dive into SaaS and building of a big business. All the best for Whatfix.
Thanks, Shripati, and hope people find some value out of this. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners Podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.